Good evening, everybody. How's it going? We got
Hello.
we got me again, Joey, famous J.W. Irwin, and then we also have our special guest, Mr. Jim Masucci. So we thought sound like Ricky wasn't able to do it tonight. He's in Mexico, so we said that we would do it. And I was thinking a little bit about it. I thought, you know what? I'd like to bring somebody in here that's fresh, that knows bees, that knows research, that we can kind of talk to a little bit and dive down some of those wormholes that we've all talked about a little bit before. And somebody that's kind of been in the trenches, so to speak, with that. And that's why I thought if anybody in here has ever actually been to the EMBA conference, you would have seen Jim Masucci there as a presenter or a speaker, kind of talking specifically on Norroa. But he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. He's been doing this for a long time, and he's been in the research field for short of 20 years. Jim, is that correct?
Yeah, less than 20. It's more like 12, 13.
And then now correct me if I'm wrong, you had led some of the largest honeybee research field trials in North America between us and Canada. Is that right?
Yeah. So we had thousands of colonies in these trials. So trying to develop a new product.
Yep.
And it's currently in the public comment period of EPA, so it should be registered soon, which is kind of cool. Say, I worked on that.
You put in years of your life to produce something that can be a benefit to the beekeeping community, right?
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Yes, I did, in the hope that it'll be a good product.
Well, listen, no pressure, man, but all this is riding on your last 12, 13 years here,
It's amazing. It just takes so long. People don't realize just how long it takes to get something into the market.
Yeah. Well, and the amount of money and time, effort, energy, and money that it takes to even get a glimpse or a glimmer of hope to get there, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Especially when it has to go through the approval process. Yeah, you're talking $100 million.
That's insanity.
And, the sad part when you think about U.S. beekeeping community, right? There's 2.5 million hives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and let's say you have 100% penetration, and you made $10 a hive. That's only $25 million when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get something approved. There's a reason we don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah.
At least from big companies, right?
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of supplements and that kind of stuff. But
sure. I guess even though us as beekeepers think that we're in this huge community of the market, in reality, especially when you're talking this animal husbandry, we're probably this little bitty small little niche of it, whereas you have the cattle industry, pork industry, and so on and so forth. These are just huge, large industries that generate a lot of revenue and money. And we're this little bitty sliver off to the side.
Yeah, we're like the, in the medical field, we have that rare disease that nobody ever has, right? And if there is a medication, it costs, $1,000 a pill. So.
I feel like I had these high hopes and expectations, Jim, and you just crushed them all down to this for this little bitty guy here off to the corner that, like the redheaded stepchild that nobody pays attention to, right? I can always count on Jim when I call Jim and I had this question. I'm like, hey, Jim, what if this or what about this? And I'm telling you, for anybody in the comments here, if you go to a researcher and you ask them a question about, it doesn't matter what it is in their field, you will never, and I mean, I will emphasize never, you will never get a yes or a no out of these guys. It doesn't exist. And I understand that now. It's all about probabilities, It's never black or white, when it comes to science, right? It's ever evolving there. I guess that's the beauty of it. I've actually said this before, and I'm like, I'm one of these guys that has so much energy that if beekeeping was extremely simple, and I feel like I would have mastered it, I would have already been bored with it, but and just that time that we all think that we have gotten, we make these splits, or we have a good success in one area or one aspect of beekeeping, and then Mother Nature comes along and just kicks our feet up from underneath us, and you're like, what happened? What did I do wrong? What happened? What could I have done differently? But that's probably what keeps me drawn in or sucked into this, and just trying to learn more and better myself as a beekeeper, and trying to, evolve on my, failures and successes too, really, So
I would bet that you have more questions now about beekeeping than you did when you first started.
I definitely do. And I have more things that are unanswered. It's like the rabbit hole that I dove down that just kept having branches wind off of it every which direction. And I don't know. It's amazing because I almost can't get enough of the answers, just trying to like tame this beast, if you will. And it's not going to happen, but I'm going to keep trying to better myself as we go through it. But one of the things that Jim and I here talked about, or have been talking about a little bit, over the course of probably the last maybe few weeks or so. Jim is kind of this guy too, for everybody that in here that has never met him, doesn't know anything about him, that is always looking for, the next answer. I mean, he's got that researcher mindset, needs to understand this, or trying to mimic or duplicate these things that sometimes Mother Nature doesn't provide to us, in the timely manner that we're searching for, much for example, when we get to usually late June or July, inevitably here in the St. Louis area or around our area, we go into this strong dearth. We've got dry weather, usually a lack of rainfall, forage drops off, which means all of our nutrition drops off. And that's when all of the little, that's when it seems like it becomes very difficult to grow bees. They've peaked, and it's that point you're fighting a hard battle to sustain the health of the colony, through lack of nutrition and such. And that's kind of where Jim and I were chatting a little bit, and we kind of wanted to dive into this one here just a little bit. And he had some ideas about things, and I'll kind of let Jim explain a little bit of that in his scientific mind there. And so what do you have for us, Jim? What are your thoughts on some of this here?
Well, so, our protein supplements, no matter which ones you buy, are not sufficient for the bees, right? They can sustain the bees for 2-3 brood cycles, and then it just crashes.
Yeah.
It's not missing proteins, amino acids, fats, it's missing a micronutrient. And I've been following this for a long time. When I was doing, my research, we wanted to raise bees over the winter and have them brood all winter long. We actually had a growth chamber for them and everything, and it failed miserably. And one of the reasons is because the food was no good, right? We didn't have pollen, and we were using a pollen-free sub, and I knew a lot about what pollen nutrition looked like, but didn't know what the missing component was. And we got on this sterol, kind of like a fat, right? A particular sterol, and I could never get enough of it, right? Because it's in pollen and it's in seaweed, and that's it. And so I tried grinding up seaweed, making extracts out of seaweed. Bees hated it. Didn't work. It's not the spirulina that one patty is. It's a different seaweed. And so I put it aside, kept thinking about it, and a couple months ago, a paper came out claiming to have a complete pollen-free diet. And they identified a different sterol as being really important to the missing link to the right the right mix. And they did a really cool study. It was in a screen house, a net house, and they had bees that were fed regular pollen sub, right? They had their complete diet, and they had the complete diet minus the sterol I thought it was, and then the complete diet minus the sterol they say it was. Well, those of the regular pollen sub crashed. They started crashing 3 weeks, and then just kind of crashed. And with their complete diet, they kept them alive for like 6 months. I mean, it really looked good. It's like, and I know the researcher who did the field trials for this company, and they asked him, said, "Would you use it if it was available?" He said, "Absolutely. If I was a commercial beekeeper, I'd absolutely use this stuff." And the stuff that I thought when they took the stuff out that I thought it was, it hurt a little bit, but not a lot, right? So that wasn't the real thing. It was this other sterol. Then when they took that out, it looked pretty much just like your regular pollen sub.
Now, the original stuff that you and I had talked about early in the spring that you had given me, those little cups, that's
different.
That was still a protein, though, correct?
Yeah, but that's different. That's a whole different thought process.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
All right. So this is the Holy Grail.
Okay.
Right. And so they identified this sterol. It's called ficosterol. Okay. And what I was looking at was 24-methylene cholesterol. And Randy Oliver looked at that one as well. And we just never could get enough of it. And so that just got me on the hunt again. Oh, what can I do? What can I do? Where can I get it? And I knew the species of seaweed that makes a lot of it. And then I found an oil from the cosmetic industry of this seaweed.
Yeah, because you're looking for a concentrated form of this. You don't want a concentrated form of this. You need it condensed.
Yeah. So I now can add it to Ultra Bee. I got Ultra Bee special oils and the seaweed oil, and then Ultra Bee with the special oils and no seaweed oil.
Okay.
And the reason I have the special oils is bees also need the omega-3 fatty acids, and that's not in corn oil or canola oil, which people normally use. It's in flaxseed oil. So if you're ever making this up, you add some flaxseed oil to it. But anyways, the bees take it, and I have a couple high school students doing the projects in screen houses right now. We've already started it. It's going. And if you ask me in about a month, I can let you know if there's anything to it. It's like, it's really cool. Now, I did hear that this complete diet is supposed to come out next year. So my experiments are kind of moot. You can buy the real stuff. But
hey, do you care if I share that picture that you sent to me of what you had set up?
No, go ahead.
Okay, give me a second. Let me pull it up. I'll send it to Melissa, and then we'll load it onto the screen here.
I'm here for technical support tonight.
Let's see. I'll share it to here. I'll have Melissa pull this up. This is part of the equipment that Jim is going to use to kind of isolate them. Okay, hold on. Here we go.
And now what I'm trying to do with this is, so you can see the screen house. Right now there's 6 nukes in this screen house. And they're separated, 3 on a pallet. I've got the that thing in the middle is sort of to orient their flights a little bit, to help them find their way. And then in front, we've got some frame feeders for them to forage sugar syrup, and then to the right of that is for water, so they can forage for water. So they're taking in the sugar syrup. They're going around. We'll know this week if they're taking in the protein patties, and then we have to wait for them to peter out. in the control.
So the idea behind this is you will you at some point in time this colony is going to collapse. Is that correct? Well,
So the colony that gets just the regular ultra bee should collapse. The
Yeah.
3 colonies in there, because we know that it's not a complete diet. And so the question is, with this seaweed oil, do they live longer? Right.
okay.
I'm happy if they just live longer, let alone whether it's, it means
Yeah.
I'm on the right track, and then I can worry about how much I'm supposed to do it.
So
Yeah.
you can just. So if you could get, so like you said, if you could get the colony that you're feeding this special diet to live a month longer, a month and a half longer, you would have taken great steps in the right direction here, at least, right?
For me, that's a win. That's a big win. And so here's what I want to do, right? So you guys don't know this, but I have this overwintering nuke house that I built. It's like a European style bee house. I can throw 80 nukes in there, and I have it heated to like 50 degrees so that it protects them from bouts of cold.
Okay.
Right. And so I'm going to be making up these sugar blocks that have the protein sub mixed in that, not uniformly, just globs of it, so that they can go and get the sugar they need, and they can get the protein they need, and make it through the winter, hopefully by even brooding up a little bit more, and I don't have to worry about chill brood.
Right.
So a friend of mine in Maine does that on strong colonies. He'll give them sugar patties with just ultra bee mixed in, and it really helps them get brood. He can't do it too early, right? He does it, a couple weeks to a month before pollen comes in. That would be the earliest. But with my heated room, I can do it sooner and have them brood up a little quicker.
Now you're talking, when you say the heated room, you're talking about the shed, the nucleus shed, basically.
Yeah. It's modeled after a European bee house. So each colony has its entrance to the outside. They can fly all winter long if they want. They still cluster, even though it's heated on the inside. The cold air causes them to cluster, but it's not a real super tight cluster.
Yeah.
And when they are when they're flying, they're just fine.
So the idea of it is they would be able to conserve some of their energy and also their resources because they're not having to fight so hard just to control the thermal regulation in the colony.
Yeah,
and
I can overwinter a lot smaller colonies.
Yeah, and potentially with that same idea, those same small colonies would actually brood up just a little bit sooner than they otherwise would. Probably not a lot.
That's the hope. And I don't want to do it with incomplete nutrition.
Yeah.
Right. Because now they're not going to be as healthy as they should be because they're lacking in nutrients. Right. So if I can get a positive hit in my screenhouse test, then I'll feel confident in doing this with a protein sub that's more close to being like the real thing.
So here, this Paul Hale Hives has a question here for you in regards to that.
Oh, so why am I in a screen tent? Yeah, the bees don't like it. All right. So you can say, why the heck am I doing it? Pollen, if they can forage pollen, it negates the whole experiment, right? Because pollen is the complete nutrition source for the bees, right? That gives them the proteins, the fats, the minerals, the vitamins, right? All the micronutrients, everything really but the carbohydrates, which is the nectar. And so if I allowed them to go and forage pollen, they wouldn't need the protein supplement. Yep. And so I can't really test the protein supplement.
I suppose ideally you'd have some big, huge, almost like a butterfly house, if you will, that they could fly around in, right? But they cannot get the protein other than what you supply to them specifically.
Right, correct. Right. Yeah. So when I went over to Germany to visit Bayer, and they had a lot of these net houses to do toxicology experiments, and they're like 60 feet long, right, and 20 feet wide. They were beautiful. I'm poor. I have a 12 by 12, so
Yeah.
it's about smaller.
Yeah, I bet that probably drives those, even though they're small nucleus colonies nonetheless, that probably drives those foragers nuts that they can't get out, right?
So what tends to happen, the old foragers die. They try to forage, they just don't make it. But the newbies sort of acclimate to being in prison.
Yeah.
And so as long as we get past this first week when all the old guys are dying and I get a replacement, we should be good.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like Stockholm syndrome, huh?
Yeah, right.
They learn to love their little space.
That's right. This is nice. I don't have to fly at all.
I was wondering about that, if they just tried to stick to the tent, trying to find a way out like a window of a house or something.
They do. So when we first tried to do this indoors, we did it in a greenhouse, and then we did it in a growth chamber, and all the lights of the greenhouse just screwed them up, right? Because they use the sun to orient.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so being inside, that was just a disaster.
Yeah.
Because they'd see the lights, they'd go to lights and this light and that light and that light, and they could never find anything, and everything died very quickly. But outside, they can still see the sun and still access that and orient somewhat.
So Larimore Farms actually has a question here when it comes to that. He's asking about, what about airborne pollens is what he's asking.
Two things. The first one is that airborne pollen tends not to be their food source.
Kind of like grasses or corn.
Yeah. And they really can't collect enough of it to be anything different. The other is, I think that the screenhouse will prevent some of that pollen to come through anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
I would imagine so.
But the bottom line is that's really not their food source, is the airborne pollen. But that's a good question. And this is something that we've talked about in the past, Tom, is how difficult bee research is. Because every step that you take, right? I mean, there's so many variables you can't control.
Right.
Yourself, you've got 3 colonies. They're going to have 3 different personalities. They're going to be 3 different sizes. They're never exactly the same.
That's right.
And you can do mite counts on those 3, and you'll have a 10, you'll have a 2, and you'll have a 3. And then what you don't know, because we've done this, you do the mite counts on the same day, just one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and you'll get different answers.
That's right.
You don't get, it won't be 10 and 10. It'll be 6 and 10. It'll be 2 and 3. It'll be 2 and 4. And then you've got all of the environment. You can't control where they're going. And so this question about, well, what about the airborne pollen? I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I can't control it.
Yeah.
And it's just another part of the environment that can mess with your data.
Well, and like you said too, even if there was some airborne pollen that did get in there, is it enough to even, I mean, is it such a negligible difference that you wouldn't even notice a difference? Because first of all, like you said, all of the airborne or wind-driven pollens, like your corns, some of your evergreens and things like that, the nutritional value in it is so small that sometimes they'll collect it, much like in the early spring months. You might see bees before the pollens actually open up, but yet they have a few days to go out and get a little cleansing flight, and they're looking for something. Maybe those days they're out there on like chicken feed or corn dust or something like that. It's almost kind of like, they just need something to do. Probably still intelligent enough to recognize that it's probably not taking them any direction. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not. But even if that pollen or that wind-driven pollen got in there, would it even push the needle either direction? On the negative side or the positive, it's probably negligible and wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah. So keep me honest here, any of you guys. But it's something like a hive will go through 50 pounds of pollen a year, right?
Oh man,
it's a large number.
It is.
And so this little bitty couple grams of windblown pollen that gets split between the 3 colonies in that 10 is nowhere near the pollen that they normally bring in.
I thought Bob Benny had said something about that before, and you know what? I bet you that number probably varies a little bit from region to region, how much brood is in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, there's so many variables that are uncontrollable about each colony, how much they bring in. But for some reason, I want to say it was even more than that. It was mind boggling to me when I heard this figure, and I didn't try to fact check it or anything like that. JW would always say, I'm out there Googling them. When I hear something, I'm searching it in Google just to see what the actual Google answer is, whether it's correct or wrong, you know what I mean? Or what have you. I don't know. It's always interesting to look these things up. Let's see here. I was actually going to search it real quick. Oops. So for anybody that just is coming in the chat, there's a few more people than when we first started. The special guest that I have on here tonight, Jim Masucci, he's a St. Louis native here and also a honeybee researcher, recently retired, but worked for Monsanto / Bayer for like 12 or 13 years on some of the largest honeybee research field trials that were done here in North America between the United States and Canada. And recently, hopefully, I guess pretty soon, that research was actually sold off to Greenlight Biosciences. Is that correct, Jim?
Yep.
And they're out of, I don't remember what country in Europe, was it?
Boston and North Carolina.
Well, I thought it was out of, they're actually headquartered here?
They're U.S.
I didn't know that. I thought it was out of the country. Okay. Yeah. So they're actually, and I spoke with the guys it was in February, actually up in Wisconsin. One of the, I guess, salesman team members, if you will, product called, can I say the name?
Yeah.
Product name is Norroa, actually. And do you want to talk about how the mechanism, how it works, how it transfers to the honeybee and how that works?
I'd be happy to, sure.
Yeah.
So Norroa is a new class of mite control. It basically uses a mechanism. The problem is, so I'm a trained molecular biologist. So if I get into the molecular biology, your viewership is going to go down really fast.
Hey, Jim, okay. Like I've said before, talk to me like I'm a teenager here, because when you get into that, maybe more like a child, even, But Joey and JW, they probably understand this better than myself. So dumb it down to my level, that layman's terms, if you will.
Yeah. So basically, what it does is it hijacks a process in the mite's body, and it's highly specific for the mite. Right? Doesn't touch the bee at all. Doesn't touch anything else. It just it hits the mite and the mite only. And what we do is we put it in like a sugar syrup, mm-hmm. and it's in a pouch, and the pouch has a bunch of holes in it, right? So when you think about feeding in a Ziploc bag, right? You've seen people feed in a Ziploc bag. You take a razor blade, and then bees go up and suck out all the sugar syrup out of the Ziploc bag. Same deal. You just peel the sticker, put it on there, and then they go and suck it out of the bag. So what happens is, in the late larval stages, the bees use nectar and pollen to dilute the brood food. The nurse bees do. So they use this sugar syrup that has Norroa in it and puts it in the brood food. So now when the founder's mite goes in to reproduce, she buries herself in the brood food. That's where she gets exposed to Norroa, and it blocks reproduction. Okay, so what happens when you use the product, you don't see a huge mite drop. So it's not the product to use if you're 5, 6, 7 mites per 100 bees, and you need to get it down below the economic threshold. That's not when you use it. But like if you're using it in spring, when mite levels are low, it's going to keep them low for a long time, for several months, because it just blocks reproduction, and then you kind of stuck with those founder's mites, and very few new mites coming through, and they kind of peter out a little bit, and then everything they recover, right? So it's like everything, and it's like what we use Apivar as our control in our field trials, because Amitraz, certainly up until recently, has been the #1 treatment for mites. And we would have it on for 6 weeks, and we do assessments every 6 weeks, and mite counts every 6 weeks to follow what's going on. As soon as the Apivar strips come out, all right, the mite levels just start going up again, just as like the untreated control. A little bit lower, but same trajectory, right? And what's happening with Norroa, it just stays flat for longer, a month longer. So, and for me, it's a perfect spring treatment to get you through the honey flow, and then you can come back with something harder that you don't worry about.
And now, just for clarification too, if I remember correctly, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but this gets food straight to the brood nest itself. This is not something that goes on when you have honey supers on. So you want them taking this syrup straight down into the brood nest, correct?
Yeah. So if you think about it, right, we're having sugar syrup, and we want them to feed the brood with it, right? So a time you really don't want to use it is during the nectar flow, because now you're competing with all the nectar coming in, right? Yeah. And it's basically just diluting out the stuff, right? So even though it's probably, I don't know what the label's going to be approved for, but we're expecting that there's going to be you can put it on with honey supers. You don't want to. Yeah. Right. If you understand what it's doing, how it's working, you don't want it when there's honey supers on. You want it,
Yeah. When I was talking, I can't remember what was the gentleman's name that I had.
Adam Peckel.
Yeah, he was the gentleman that was out there when I was in Wisconsin and back in February, and kind of chatting with him about it. He said they were a little bit unsure of a couple of things at that point. And I don't know if it had to do with label requirements, restrictions, et cetera. But he talked about, I think he said, now correct me if I'm wrong in this, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 of these bags of this syrup with this treatment, if you will. And you needed how many per brood box or brood chamber?
You're talking 2.
2. Okay.
2 per brood chamber.
So ideally,
which is about a quart of stuff.
Okay. Would you say ideally you'd want to apply this when the bees are in a single brood box at that point, so that your cost would be more in check and cheaper?
That's what I plan to do. Okay. Yes.
I mean, otherwise you're potentially using twice the product, correct?
Yeah. So another thing, think about the fall, the late fall. You've got a boatload of bees, right? But there's not a lot of brood going on. If you go too late and the brood shut down and the mites are not reproducing, well, then you can't really block reproduction if the mites aren't reproducing.
Right.
Right. So you have to understand your goal here is to block mite reproduction. When's the time you want to do that?
Spring.
And to me, I want to do it early, so I never get an issue later on. They never get really high, especially when the honey supers are on and you've got all of this reproduction going on of bees, you also have reproduction of mites. So you come out of your honey flow with a boatload of mites, it should block that. And
yeah, you always feel like your hands are tied, knowing that like this time of year in June, like for me, example, I haven't extracted anything. So all my honey supers are actually on, but I feel like my hands are tied a little bit because I know that these mites are absolutely going to town inside these colonies right now and just ramping up. They're doubling numbers, every cycle. But yet until I actually pull those supers, most treatments you can't put on the colonies, they're not approved, not safe with food consumption, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, this would, having something to jump on ahead of time to keep them in check. I realize now you can probably utilize what's the cardboard strip that has oxalic acid in it?
Voroxan.
Yeah. Whatever. I guess you can use that.
I think so. Obviously, I know a lot about Norroa. I don't have that same insider information for Voroxan and what happens.
Okay.
But everything I've heard Randy Oliver talk about and saying it's the same deal. It doesn't knock them down. It takes, a month or so before you see a reduction in mites. That sounds like reproduction to me again.
Yeah.
Right. And even if it's not, it's kind of the same deal. And so you don't want to put the Voroxan on when you have a whole lot of mites. So it seems to me like Norroa and Voroxan are sort of interchangeable.
Yeah.
And I think you do want to mix up your treatments, right? Because we're going to get resistance, right? We're hitting amitraz, we're losing that because it was amitraz for several years. Right. So we need to mix up the modes of action to prevent resistance. And
sure. So 21st Bee actually had a pretty good question on here. Does the mechanism that targets the Varroa mite specifically also target all the other beneficial mites in the hive as well?
So simple question. And like Tom says, I can never give a simple answer.
You will never get a yes or no, Michael. I'm telling you right now, it won't happen.
The simple answer is it targets Varroa mites specifically. Okay. It is an RNA-based mechanism, and it's a sequence-based mechanism, and the sequence matches Varroa specifically. Okay. Depending on how closely related mites are, and I'm not aware of a lot of beneficial mites in the hive, and I would love to know if there are. It depends how closely related they are. So like the question would be, would it work for Tropolaleps? It certainly wouldn't be the ideal product. The question is, are there any overlaps in the sequence between Tropolaleps and Varroa? Are they closely enough or related that there's some? But it wouldn't be the complete sequence, and so it wouldn't work, nearly as well or have that kind of effect. So in general, it is specific to Varroa mites, and there would be very rare instances where there might be some effect on something else.
Sure. Well, and much like, okay, this is one treatment, and you're targeting, you're trying to target the reproductive, cycle of these. There are a lot of other different treatments out there, everything from mechanical treatments to, just doing brood breaks. Obviously, we're working from the end of trying to create hygienic behavior within honeybees so that they can help to control the mite population in there. And potentially, I've heard it like this before too, and maybe this is a little bit off base, to be able to withstand potential heavier virus loads in the colonies, because the way it's explained to me is every colony has viruses inside of it. It's just when they reach that threshold of that breaking point, and that might be different for each colony, at that point in time, that's when you start to see real problems, like visible problems in the colony of the health, the brood pattern, all different sorts of things. So this is just one potential treatment option that is out there that's, again, specifically trying to target, not kill the mite specifically, but if you've interrupted the brood cycle of it, then essentially you're doing the same thing here. So, again, I don't think there's one silver bullet out there for it. This is one thing that's going to help put like a tool in our toolbox, so to speak, to help control this long term, because it's probably pretty safe to say that this pest, it's not going to go anywhere. It's one of these things where we're having to learn how to control it. And there's a lot of different ways, I think, to do it, a lot of different ways to skin that cat. But this is just another tool to drop in the toolbox, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hygienic behavior. So again, when you're doing viral loads, okay, and let's say you take your group of bees and you say, okay, look, I've got 1 million virus particles for these 100 bees, right? And that's your viral, you extrapolate, that's your viral load for this hive. Well, each of those 100 bees have 10,000 virus particles in it? Or is there one bee with 1 million virus particles in it? And that's your typhoid Mary that's going to, it's going to die and it's going to spread everything, right? And so where the hygienic behavior comes in, it pulls out those typhoid Marys and cleans it up, thus kind of reducing your viral load overall, because you're getting out those that have really high viral loads.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I guess bouncing back a little bit to what you were talking about earlier on the nutrition. He's talking about the specific sterol.
Well, so I'm a little nervous that he's mixing up two different conversations.
Yeah.
Because the sterol has no impact on Varroa. It is purely a micronutrient that is needed for the bees. Right? And the Norroa product is not a sterol. It's something completely different.
Yeah, sorry there, Paul. We kind of changed gears just a little bit, talking about what he was originally looking into, doing a little bit of research there, talking about nutrition for the honeybees themselves, specifically the proteins. And then we kind of started to hit a little bit upon when I reintroduced Jim for people in the audience here about what he had actually worked on as a researcher for the last 12 to 13 years. And one of the things he was kind of into, the sterol mixture was actually something he's just tried out on his own, that we kind of chatted a little bit about there. But overall, I mean, we're looking at the health of the honeybee colony. We're trying to, figure out what we can do to make these little bugs in the box more manageable, if you will, I guess. So let's see. Did anybody else in here have any questions for Jim specifically on either one of those topics? Oh, here, Edward has a pretty good question here for you as far as that goes.
I don't know. So it is a screen tent, and so that all the walls are open. It is in the shade, so it's not in the direct sun. And if this experiment fails, one reason is easily because of the screen tent, right? That's putting an awful lot of stress on these bees.
Yeah.
I don't have any electricity at these yards. They're out, remote areas and such. And so I am making sure that they have plenty of water. And as I said, that it's a screen tent, so any breeze goes through is gonna pass through the screen and such.
Melissa's trying to pin the thing at the top, so If anybody wanted to come in and ask any questions, you're welcome to do that.
All right.
So back up.
Yep. Is everybody good? Can everybody hear us?
Can
She
hear
did-
you just fine.
She did some monkeying around on the computer, and I wasn't sure what she was doing there. Yeah, so here we'll change gears just a little bit more, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about.
Uncle,
Yeah, I already got that one.
about the
Change
temperature
gears
chart.
just a little bit, and we'll talk about what Jim and I have been kind of seen here somewhat locally, and then maybe get some of JW's input, and then also Joey's input as well about what those guys have been seeing. So interestingly enough, I actually had a couple of
Philip's got a good
conversations.
question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Philip's got a good question.
Where's he at?
You just asked it.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, before we change gears, then Philip's asking about any videos on the process
You have
of.
that question?
Already got it.
On the Norroa, how Norroa works.
I'm assuming that's what he was asking.
Hey Philip,
Yeah.
maybe clarify that.
The Norroa or the tent?
They used to have some videos on their website, Greenlight Biosciences. I don't know what they have at this point, but I would search their website and just look for Norroa. It's Narroa. Novaroa is how they came up with the name Norroa.
Oh, that's pretty clever. I didn't hear him talk. I didn't realize that.
But
Is that the, excuse me, well, if I can speak, is that same, that little gal from Michigan up there, that beefy, but I didn't get a chance to look at it, put out a video today about some new treatment. Is this what we're talking about there? Is that the same stuff? Do you know? That little gal from up there in Michigan, what's her name? She goes,
You talking about that blonde gal?
yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that video or
She
watch
put out
it.
a video today. I just noticed it today, but I haven't had a chance. I just got in to look at it or anything. There's supposed to be some kind of a new, maybe the same thing that he's talking about. Jim.
I don't know. So I've been consulting with Greenlight since they purchased the product and been helping them design the field experiments stuff. This year, I'm least involved. As they're getting more and more learned in how to do this the right way, and it's also getting closer and closer to launch, so they don't have really hard questions to ask. They have gone to some called influencers to do the products, and I don't know who they are. They didn't ask me, so it could be. I just don't know the answer.
So, Jim, I have a question for you. Maybe a little bit of clarification for people in the audience too. Can you explain or tell people the difference between a mRNA and then also the product that you were helping to develop?
So you're going to force me to go into molecular biology.
Just give a short layman's version, if you will. There might be a little bit of confusion about that. I know sometimes people get a little bit twitchy.
I understand, right? DNA and RNA are three-letter words.
Yeah,
right?
It's a lot of things we don't understand.
But I will also say, go to Amazon and Google RNA. And you can buy 500 milligram RNA tablets make you really healthy. As all the reviews say, it works great. So it's used as a human supplement. Different RNA though. There's lots of different kinds of RNA. So mRNA is called messenger RNA. And you may or may not know that DNA is what your genes are made of. And it tells all the cells what to do, right? It's the directions for the cells. The messenger RNA is the copy of the DNA that's supposed to be used at that point in time, right? It's what protein's going to make it. It encodes a protein, which is your enzymes or structural proteins or whatever in the cell, right? You have to think in chemistry terms when you're thinking about biology. right? We're all chemicals. And so the messenger RNA, so like when you're thinking about mRNA from a vaccine, right? What that's doing is having your cells make the antigen that they're going to make antibodies to that mimics the virus that you're trying to get immunity to. All right. What they used to do is they used to make that protein fragment and then inject the protein fragment into you as the vaccine. Now they're putting in the messenger RNA, having your cells produce that protein fragment.
Okay.
Right. And that's where you get it. So that's messenger RNA. What we're doing with the Norroa is it's a double-stranded RNA, which I know. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to go into the weeds. So when you think of messenger RNA, it's just a single strand, right, of this RNA. The double-stranded RNA are two complementary strands that come together in this spiral staircase, right? You've heard of the double helix. Right?
Yep.
Normally, RNA is not in that form. And when a cell recognizes RNA in that form, it recognizes that as foreign and obliterates it. Okay? So what we have done is put RNA in that form. It gets into the mite, and the mite cells say this is foreign. So they're basically obliterating the gene that they need to reproduce.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're self-destructing themselves.
I see.
All right, and so it's really, even though they're both RNA molecules, they're completely different mechanisms, completely different forms.
So, okay, so and you, I think
You
you said this
regret
earlier,
asking me that, don't you?
just to confirm, you said earlier this has no bearing on the honeybee itself.
Right.
This is specifically targeting the mite.
Yeah.
and
Okay,
the
so it's the
reproduction
coolest
cycle.
mechanism you can think of, right? We give them this RNA, they chop it up into little pieces, and then they say, is there any sequence that matches this, right? And if it does, they cleave it.
Yeah.
And so it's gone, it gets degraded. So it matches the gene of Varroa, and so it finds those messenger RNAs and kills them. It doesn't have the same sequence in honeybees. So it searches in honeybee cells if it even gets to the cell. All right, there's a good chance it does not. But if it did, it would search and not find any sequence.
Yeah.
And so nothing happens.
Yeah.
It just gets, and in reality, it just gets degraded as a in their digestive tract from the bees.
I gotcha.
But,
So Philip, to answer this question, and I'll let Jim hit on it. He talked a little bit earlier about this is delivered through basically a sucrose syrup. Was that right?
yeah.
Kind of like a feed that gets fed into the brood nest itself.
So when the founder smite enters the brood food of the larvae that it's infecting, there's some of the Norroa in that brood food, and that's where she's exposed.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to find that article, but I couldn't get it to come up. I'm too.
What's that?
I was trying to find that article on that new product she said was referring to that came. She said just came out, but I can't find it. So I'm sorry.
You were referring to Emily at BeFit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. I seen a little clip or something of it. I didn't watch any of her video on that, but I did see that.
It was a named product, something like that. What Jim just mentioned, but I may not have been the same thing. That's what I was wondering. Maybe someone on the chat was privy to the information because Vandascana.
Vandascana, yes.
Yeah, that's what she was talking about.
Yep, that's it.
That's the same
So Vandascana is the active ingredient Norroa is the trade name or brand name that it
Okay.
was sold under.
So she was doing a review on it. Is that what I'm
Well,
understanding?
no, she wasn't doing a review. She was just saying that that was a new
Okay, I was going to say because this.
possible treatment for the varroa for folks. I hadn't had a chance to look at, but I hope come up with it. That's what she's mentioned. That was Vandascana. Yeah,
I got you.
that's the
I'm
actual
I'm
product.
sure there's probably not many people that have actually, and only on the the field research have even been able to utilize this out in the bee industry or the bee field. So I'm sure that's under a special license or whatever. I don't know how that works, Jim, but
I didn't read the article or look at her post or anything, but it's supposed to be new to the market. Is that the case, Jim? Is this what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's in the final stages of the review process now from the EPA. It needs EPA approval before it can be sold. So.
Yeah, last year when I was or early this year when I spoke with him, he said that there was hopes to have something like that being able approvals and all that stuff being done. Hopefully by summertime is what he had talked about, and obviously that was probably a fingers crossed sort of trying to get through the government sectors of that.
I believe the public comment period ends end of June.
So pretty quickly then.
So. And then I don't know how long it takes for them to respond to comments and then.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I didn't even see I think they were, and I think you told me this, Jim, they were actually on the opposite side on the far wall when they were at the North American Honeybee Expo. I don't know if Melissa and I ever even made it over to that last row to see any of the vendors over there, but I believe that's where you said they were stationed at.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting stuff. I know that goes well beyond my realm of understanding. When you dive down those rabbit holes, but it looks like there's a couple guys that were fascinated by that.
You know what's interesting about this, right? So I've talked about Norroa for years, right? I've talked about various things, and I don't know if it's just me or what, but if Amitraz came out and you asked, well, how does Amitraz work, right? I mean, what answer do you expect? Do you expect, well, it's this type of chemistry, it binds to this protein, it does that, because that's where I always end up going with Norroa, really far into the molecular mode of action. Yeah. And you don't get that. So
yeah, those wheels turn pretty slow, Paul. Mark Miller has a comment here on this, which I guess is a fair ask when it comes to that.
So the one good thing about this is we have a very good idea of other organisms, right? And the mode of action is extremely specific. All right. So in the hive, nothing. It gets broken down very fast. Like if you were to spill some onto the ground, microorganisms are going to just eat it up really, really fast. So it's probably the most specific product that you could get for Varroa. All right. What pockets are getting paid sounds like a pretty cynical question. And I don't really know what's meant by that.
I'm not laughing at you, Jim. I know the party that made that post, so he can be a little cynical at times. He's pretty.
Hey, I'm surprised JW didn't ask that question.
And I tend to agree with him on some of this stuff. So please don't be offended. I'm not laughing at you. I was laughing at the guy that made the comment to you about being who's getting paid.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, when, I suppose I should say when the approval happens. I'm sure it'll probably get there. but when the approval happens and what that looks like around. So all those field trials were all done here just in North America, right? Between the United States and the Canada?
Nope. They were some elsewhere in the world.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Early on, it was U.S. and Canada.
Okay.
And I know Greenlight wants to go internationally with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada would be international, but outside of North America.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I can imagine if you would have spent that kind of money in the research and development and the time that you've been holding on to this, if you've been developing something for the last 15 years or what have you, you have a little bit of money tied in for sure. So, people want to see a little bit of ROI there. You don't just all of a sudden, I'm sure, wake up one morning and say, "This is what I'm going to do. Here's $100 million, Jim. Good luck."
Yeah, right.
No, I guarantee there's accountability behind this, right? Here's Brian's question. This is Brian Zavada, Flower Street Farms.
Hey, how you doing? It's hard. That's a hard question to ask. So as you know, I work for Monsanto, and I was actually in regulatory for a while, working on the approvals of the GMOs, right? Which, if you want to throw things at me, go ahead. But they were great products, and I stand by them. And after every approval, the EPA would get sued. All right, it would get sued by Friends of the Earth and such. And what that has done is made sure that any possible question you could possibly think of gets answered. And so you can talk about streamlining the process, but you do want to make sure what goes out is safe, right? And you want to make sure that they are asking the right questions. And so, as frustrating it is from someone trying to get something through the system, you do want to have faith that what's coming out is okay. So I don't really have an answer to your question, Brian. It's a slow process, sort of on purpose, so that they can actually do a good job evaluating the data that they have.
And how long?
Streamlining and EPA shouldn't even be in the same thing.
It's true, right? There's bureaucracy and everything, but again, you want to make sure it's evaluated appropriately.
A lot of hoops.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, like I said, end game is there's multiple ways to skin the cat. If it's a product that somebody chose not to use, then so be it. There's, I think, multiple ways we can help to control this little pest. I think that probably, there's a lot of, we've all talked about this here earlier. There's a lot of variables that are at play here that are out of our control when it comes to, controlling that pest in general, depending on what type of mechanism we use, whether it's a product, that we have to purchase, or whether it's a mechanical control, whatever it might be. But I think the end result is all the same. We're looking to control this thing so that we can, the great idea would be to eradicate it, but I think that would be very naive to say that. This is one thing.
Yeah,
that's probably
that and the mosquito, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure if you could control either one of these, you would either be a millionaire or you'd be a trillionaire or you would be dead. One of the, I don't know which one would come first. Yeah. So, if we could, maybe we'll just run around the chat box here and see. We'll kind of talk a little bit about changing up gears a little bit, more lighthearted topic, if you will, about what everybody's been seeing in their own maybe bee yards or their own area. Like Joey's down in Louisiana, Matt's over there just a little bit, 45 minutes south of us. JW's a few hours over toward the Indiana border, but just looking at what our bees are doing and the honey crop is doing. So far for us, actually, our bees have done very well. We overwintered pretty well. The only thing I've talked about this before, I was pretty disappointed in is of my overwintering of my nucleus colonies, which is, going into our 8th season. We did very poorly on that, which I kind of beat myself up over a little bit. I feel like I could have done a little bit better. And even though I had a failure there, I feel like I've gained a little bit of knowledge from that to help me through the next one. But, we had really good success in our production colonies. And that's over 7 different bee yards, actually. And they're all probably within about a distance no greater than probably 20 miles from the furthest points, basically. But we were able to split all them, and I think we sold off roughly about 90 nucleus colonies. And I actually just went back through all of our bee yards, inventory and everything as far as equipment, what we're going to need, where our splits are at, reevaluating those. And I'm actually sitting at, I think, 212 queen right colonies right now, which is probably a little bit above where I had anticipated on being. But I'm sure given a little bit of nutrition dearth that's going to be right around the corner for us, that'll help separate the men from the boys, so to speak, in those colonies and weed out some of the weaker ones, if you will. But our honey crop this year is definitely going to be down. I have a handful of colonies that have 4 supers on them now. 4th super not being filled. But this last week we encountered so much rain, and it wasn't just the amount of rain that fell, but it was the amount of days that we had that were either rainy, overcast, or all the above, which really I noticed. I'm not sure what the rest of you guys around here seen, but we were chatting on that group chat here, I guess this morning, Jim, or yesterday, with a few other people around the area. And I did notice, I think it was Tuesday afternoon, I felt like they were starting to bring in a little bit of nectar. And Wednesday, I think all day they were bringing it back. And I'm pretty certain that it was probably clover that they were hitting. I looked at a couple different clover fields and patches, and they were hitting it pretty good. I think that was probably trying to release some nectar. But then today was just an overcast day all day. The flight activity was mediocre at best, but we're going to have definitely a less than stellar honey crop year. I know there's been no less than 2 beekeeping operations reach out to me this week alone looking for honey, and not huge bulk orders, but trying to supplement what they've had, which tells me even some of the other guys are starting to run out of their honey a little bit. So, hey, Joey, why don't we go to you first, and you tell us a little bit about what you guys are seeing for your honey flow this year. If you feel like your honeybee colonies are looking good, the overall health seems to be intact, and then what you guys think you're going to have for your honey crop.
Well, right now it looks like that our flow is slowing way down. We still got a trickle coming in, enough to keep them a little bit busy. They're not really packing it in like they were just a couple of weeks ago. We got a late start and look like it's ending on time or earlier. So I'm kind of not expecting as good a season as I had last year, which was a little short too. But I'll have enough. I think I'll have enough because some of the boxes I've looked in, I pulled, I've been kind of cherry picking frames and spinning them out and putting them back into boxes. I pulled a little, like 430 pounds so far. And I've got several of my production hives that do have full supers on them. Last time I went through, they just wasn't quite ready to pull. And I've got a few that was supposed to have been production hives, just never peaked in time to catch that flow because of lack of getting their queen mated right to start with and had to start over. But I'll probably get, I'm looking to get a little close to last, but maybe a little under.
Yeah.
Which is around 1,500 pounds for my little operation.
Now, did you notice last year? Did you notice a drop in your honey production, or was it pretty stellar?
it dropped. It still did good last year, but it dropped because my tallow got washed away last year. I got like 3 good days, maybe 4 of that tallow flow, and then when that storm came, it just kind of blew everything away,
How
washed
long does that?
everything off.
How long does that typically last for you guys? The tallow flow?
2 or 3 weeks, maybe at the longest.
Really?
Yeah, they don't all come in at the same time.
Okay.
You know, they kind of do like our privet does.
You know, I kind of noticed that too. Like for us, when you're talking about that, I kind of think about that like our black locust tree does the same. It seems like, whereas I'll notice some of them start to bloom, and I'm watching. I have different areas, like Jim, for instance, heading out toward Washington, Missouri, along 100 there. There are, I'm going to say, groves growing in the highway easements going alongside, because obviously once those trees pop up, they grow very, very quickly and they colonize like that. You know, there's groves of them, and you'll see some of them start to bloom a little bit. And it's kind of haphazard how it works, and I don't really understand it fully. Maybe it has to do with nutritional value, moisture content. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe it has a little to do with microclimates or something like that, just a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler. But that seemed to kind of take place this year, Joey, whereas I noticed that bloom only lasts like 7, maybe 10 days or so. But when the different bloom cycles of the same species of tree in a very similar area, one will bloom before the other, and there's a slight overlap in each one of them. So it'll last maybe a couple weeks, at best a little bit longer than that if our weather doesn't get weird, and typically it does. So sounds like what you guys experienced with the tallow flow.
Yeah, and we didn't get any privet, hardly any. My first pull, I could taste the privet in it.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything else has just been like blackberry. I guess that mimosa and elderberry.
Well, what does the privet actually taste like? We have privet here, the Chinese privet, but I don't know if we get enough of it that I would say it's unlikely, probably depending on where you're at and how much is there. It's unlikely that we could build a box of privet, only because I don't know how much nectar it produces for one, and two, I don't even know if it's light or dark. I couldn't tell you any difference about it.
Well, some years here, it helps you get your hives built up. You can get some wax drawn out with it.
Yeah.
And it help you build up, and that's good. Some years it'll kick in a high gear and get you in trouble, and you'll have everybody wanting to swarm. It's never consistent. And like this year, it was just spotty. There'd be 4 or 5 privet out there trying to bloom, but only one of them would actually be doing real good, and the rest of them just kind of lagging. And taste, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like I don't know. When I taste it, I get like a broody. I don't know, no other way to describe it. It's almost like you eating out of the brood nest. I can't describe it.
It's like catechol, doesn't it, Joy?
Mike Berry calls it floral, but all of it's floral to me. But I don't know.
Well, I guess
you call it, JW.
Sir,
What'd you call it?
You're not old enough to remember hadacol. That's what they used to give the Geritol and hadacol.
Yeah, I remember those.
I'm not sure what you're saying, JW, but it sounds like you're not speaking English right now, because I have no clue what you're talking about.
that was the two main build your body blood.
Yeah.
Blood.
Do you have tired blood?
Yeah. Take Geritol, hadacol. That was the products back in the what do you say, BT before Tom?
Yeah.
Oh,
for anybody that really matters.
I don't know if y'all seen them talking about it in there, but Brian at Castle Hives, he was on a little news clip I saw today. I don't know. I just assumed it was today. I don't know when it actually happened, but he had to go to some station there and pull a swarm out of a tree.
Oh, nice. Hey, Brian, hopefully you served the beekeepers of America well, and you represented everybody well, right? I'm sure you did.
You got to remember, he's an ex-school teacher, so you know how they are.
You're saying he's a good politicker. That's what you're trying to say.
I didn't say that.
He has all the right words.
I said he was an ex-school teacher. That's all I said, Tom. Don't be putting words in my mouth. No.
And I know most of y'all probably already seen it, but we lost one of our big YouTube
I've seen that today.
beekeepers this
Yeah.
week. I just went blank on him. Wallsby man.
Yeah.
He passed away the other day. I used to watch a lot of his videos years ago. I think I've watched every one of them at least once.
That was all before my time. Joel wasn't born yet. I like Tom.
Right. Hey, so if you don't, so sounds like Joey's going to be down in his crop this year. Jim, what are you seeing on all of your bee yards that you have? Crop look like it's going to be stellar for you, less than average, well below average. What do you got?
Bees are fine. There's just not a lot coming in.
Yeah.
Right. So I was 600 pounds low for black locust. Normally get about 3,000 pounds. And right now, I'm not sure I've got a full super anywhere.
Wow.
So, we'll see. I'm really banking on the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, right?
Exactly.
We need to get that rain out of here. I mean, we don't need the rain to leave, because we all understand that now that we've gotten past all the tree forage, which sucks moisture from deep, we're on to field forages now. Most, not all, but well, I guess the smooth sumac is blooming. You got a little mimosa going. Elderberry, is probably on the downhill slope for us here. But so most of our tree forage is kind of going to be on that downhill slope, and we're kind of more dependent upon that field forage. And obviously that plant is more susceptible to, varying weather conditions, too much rain, not enough rain, and that can happen very quickly. It seemed like, last year we were getting all this rain, and all of a sudden the temperature just heated up, and what clover was there just burnt up. The blooms burnt up, and there was probably a few days in there in between that it probably released nectar, but after that, it just went away. The plant can't sustain when that kind of heat, we get up into the mid 90s, I'm sure. So are there any one of your bee yards particular that are doing very well, or are they all just all well below average?
No, there's Defiance is doing pretty well.
Yeah.
That's near some conservation land. And so it always does better than a lot of them. I think Maryland Heights is doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But
probably
Franklin County bees.
They just didn't serve you well, did they?
Actually, they did much better than I was hoping with the black locust. I was pleasantly surprised.
Good. Yeah, the one yard that I have up there behind Stratman Feed, that's probably somewhere near yours. That's the one I had most of those small colonies in, most of my nucleus colonies. That one just did. I mean, I think I had how many was in that? 18, 20?
Yeah.
There was probably 18 to 20 hives in there, and that's my largest fail, mainly because I think there were small 5-frame nucleus colonies in there, and I had 3 of those come out of winter, and all 3 of them have supers on them. And actually one of them has I have put a third super on it actually. So they have 2 supers that are full out of that. And basically over the last probably week or so, they hadn't brought much back in, but you know, that's the only place I have the bees is in Franklin County. So I don't know what other areas would have produced, you know. With any luck, we actually may have. It's not going to happen this year, but next year we'll have actually at least a couple down in St. Louis City, which will be interesting to see. If nothing more than just looking for observation on what that looks like, you know, as far as it'd be, I would say in my mind anyway, I'm thinking it's likely that, you're going to have smaller flows out there maybe, but a little bit more consistent because you're going to be somewhere, well, maybe not because there's not a lot of residential around there. That's mostly all commercial buildings and parklands and things like that. But I was going to say maybe there'll be some other things that are the flowers and things like that. They'll able to kind of help sustain a little bit of nutrition on. So Matthew, you're up, man. What are you seeing in the bee yards?
They're picking up pace as of recently. Once we started getting highs in the 80s, for sure.
Yeah,
And not raining. I feel like this is basically going to be one of those years that's going to be a big growth ring in a tree. When you cut it down, this will be one of the wide rings. With all the rain we've gotten. So you just got to take the flow. Take it as it comes. And overall, comparative to last year, I feel like there is still enough time. If they get enough fly days to make something happen.
yeah,
But it's not going to be a bumper year by any means, but hopefully we'll get enough to harvest and fill our needs. So
yeah,
any colony that's not really producing honey or what I see is going to be bringing anything in, I'm using them for mating splits and using their assets and not trying to focus on them when something may be impossible for them to achieve it.
sure,
So requeening, if they don't have supers full, there's an issue in my book. So they're getting requeened and using those assets basically in grafts and trying to build up
yeah.
stronger colonies for next year. And so
Well, you had a pretty
already,
stellar year though yourself with creating nucleus colonies.
yeah, it was a learning year. This is my third season, so I'm learning. I'm soaking it up like a sponge, every day, literally. And yeah, we sold off about 65 colonies and a handful, probably a couple dozen mated queens, and definitely some virgins as of recently.
Yeah,
So everything's going really well. Just trying to be self-sustainable and trying to really next year a goal for me would be able to overwinter enough queens where I can make up my nukes here with these solstice queens or around that time and keep enough for honey production. Those young overwinter queens are always pretty darn good apparently
oh
the
yeah,
next year. So just
yeah,
try to focus on keeping young queens and just grow from within as much as possible. Learn,
oh yeah,
make mistakes and push the envelope and learn. So we're on our third round of splits, and mated, and having them come back mated, pull the queen, start colonies, and drop in a cell, and have them just keep splitting our splits basically right
hmm,
now. So I'm
yeah,
fighting. Actually, that's why I was late. I had to go and make sure all my jars were on. We're getting rain here tonight, as you know, and had to make sure all my jar feeders were secured on top of the. I have a 10 frame divided with a middle divider for 5 frame nukes. So that way, hopefully one of them gets mated, and that way I can,
yeah. So
So Matt,
what is? I'm
I
sorry.
have a
Go ahead,
question.
Jim.
Sorry.
Yeah.
sure.
Are you planning on banking queens over the winter?
No, not necessarily. What I want to do there is just do kind of what you're describing, like a nucleus bank setup, and
Okay.
kind of get them maybe in a 5.
Whoops.
Oh,
Oh, his wife just slapped him out of the chair. I
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
Oh
Pull
boy.
the plug.
One and keep
yeah.
them
He pulled his plug.
small. Not try to get them too not not trying to get too big on them if I
Yeah.
can.
Okay.
Hey Matt, back up about 10 seconds because you cut out and we didn't hear anything. Right after Jim asked you the question.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, try to overwinter those queens, not necessarily banking them, but more of like a 5/5 configuration,
Right.
similar to kind of what you're talking about, kind of in a condensed setup, to where they can possibly help share each other's heat at the same time
Yeah.
as,
Yeah.
I've been really intrigued by the whole nutrition thing, and I've found that to be extremely important in my growth, in the short amount of time that I've been doing it. I think that overall beekeepers underestimate the nutrition needs of our bees, and I'm just guessing. I don't have any kind of scientific education to prove that, other than what I see in the colonies. If I don't give them what I feel like they need at that time, you know. Um, but yeah, it's a fascinating endeavor for sure.
See, Matt, that's where Jim up here comes in. If he does his job right, okay, if he's spot on with this, and I'm going to poke at him just for a minute. He knows I do this. Spot on with this little field trial that he's doing right now. He may uncover that, maybe not a silver bullet, maybe it's a brass or copper bullet or something, that gets us a little step closer to supplementing nutrition when we hit our July, August, dog days of summer, hotter than we were bargaining for. Even the flowers shrink back to nothing because they don't want to deal with the heat and such, can supplement with a little bit of that nutrition to help keep those bees from going too far backwards. It's like we fight so hard in the springtime to get these girls built up and get them looking stellar and we're looking really good. And then we get that, Missouri, heat wave that rolls in here and just, knocks everything back down,
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a time last summer in the dearth where I didn't see very much cat brood at any point. I mean, at least one specific time, you could go in there and almost catch them broodless.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's when I hit them with some good vapor at that time. It was too hot for anything else. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's to each their own. And I'll have to watch back. I was setting raccoon traps, with my earlier, but I'll have to listen back to the live and kind of hear what Jim had to say. So I know
Yeah.
that I've been meaning to meet him. We've almost met a couple times through Tom, and
Yeah.
but yeah, it was good to finally meet you, at least on this.
Yeah.
You needed to come to those meetings. I told you Jim was going to be there. I'm like, you got to listen
I
to
know
Jim
it.
talk, man. You got
I
to
know
get
it.
there,
I know it. I'll figure a way to shake loose.
Here, Carl has a question kind of for you and I, but I'll let you hit this.
Are you both queenering? Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I have a builder right now. I just usually just have one builder set up at a time, but I have probably, I don't know, there's at least 40 grafts in right now, and I have some cells in the incubator probably going to hatch out tonight. So I'm making splits every day, At least I try to make them in series of 3 or 4 when I'm doing it. So
Yeah.
it just
You're going
depends
to have
on the cells and what's available, but
you-
we're already at about 140 right now, and we'll be condensing. I'm going to be selling some more bees off, and only keeping the strongest of the strong. I'm pretty intense on my what I want to keep and what I don't. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've been kind of assessing some of those colonies in there too, and putting check marks on them. The ones I'm like, I feel like they should have been a little bit ahead here in the game.
yeah.
So I had an interesting thing happen to me last week. So I would have had the remainder of any queens out there should have been mating last week. And, the one thing that's been making me nervous around our area is the fact that we've had so much cloudy weather, rainy weather, and it actually even cooler weather than we otherwise would have gotten here in St. Louis. Normally it's a little bit warmer this time of year, but cooler weather too. I was really concerned about mating success on these queens. But you want to know, my success on overall with this has been like 95, 96%, which is probably the best I've ever seen. Why? I can't explain that because the weather has just been absolutely less than perfect, But I had actually 2 colonies out in Robertsville, as a matter of fact, that I had kind of written off last week. They had started to go laying worker. And at that point, and they were box full of bees, split 8-frame single. At that point in time, I almost never, after I had tried this a couple years in a row or a couple times in a row a few years back, I almost never put any effort or energy into a laying worker. Box of bees or not, I usually shake it out on the ground, I pull the box back, shake it out on the ground, and let the bees go wherever they're going to go. and I pull my equipment back, take the combs back, and I'll usually I don't put all of them in, but I'll start supplementing each one of those combs inside of another colony just to kind of protect and utilize that resource. They'll clean them back up and start, relaying them, on a nice strong colony. But I'll be darned if I didn't go back today. I was going to shake those colonies out, and one of them, by accident, I had left a 3.5-inch feeder shim on. They built a bunch of comb in it last week and stored a bunch of honey up there. And I'm like, So I didn't have the time to deal with it. I put it back together and thought, you know what, I'll deal with it next week. Came back in, and first thing I did, I took that top off. I seen they had a whole bunch of honey capped off in there, and the combs were 3.5 inches tall, and they had about half the lid. And I just started shaking them out on the ground like this, wherever the truck, and flipped it over, started taking my hive tool and cutting the pieces of comb off and laying them on a box on the back of the truck. And I figure I just zip them up in a baggie and give them to some neighbors or something like that, like some comb. Oh yeah, here's kind of what was left over of it. The other stuff I kind of discarded and stuff. But anyway, I pulled it all back. And one of the last things, let's see. Oh, on one of the 2 hives, when I got in there, I get over to some of the frames. I'm going through. I'm like, yeah, it's nothing. And I get over to the last 2 frames somehow. And I don't remember on this one because I didn't mark it on there. If I had found like a swarm cell or something that I slipped into there, because theoretically, I've never had success introducing a virgin queen, a mated queen into a laying worker. They just murdered them. And I did that twice before, and I'm like, no more. So I don't remember if I had done that in this particular colony, but there was a queen starting to lay on those last 2 frames. And first I thought it was just a laying worker that was in there. And then I realized I actually seen the queen in there, and I'm like, hold on, what do we have going on? So I'm going to go ahead and give it one more week, because I think somehow, and I can't remember if I put a frame of cap cells in there or not. I must have. So anyway, the second one that I had already shaken out on the ground, the last thing I did was I took my weed eater, my trimmer, and I'm trimming around the hives and kind of cleaning it up a little bit, Well, I'll be darned if the one I didn't shake out of the ground and started pulling out. When I was trimming, I don't know why my eye actually was, I caught, my eye just kind of happened to catch on it. I look down and I see a small little ball of bees in the ground, right? And for some reason, my eye kind of just drew right to it, and I stopped and I looked down and I seen a couple bees over another one. And I'm, that idea that, hey, there's a queen in that little bunch. I reached down there and I flick it around. Sure enough, there's a queen, a mated queen sitting right down there. She must have came in and went up to the lid and started laying up there, because some of the comb that I cut out actually had worker brood in it. And I didn't think anything of it. I was already in a mode of cutting it out, shaking it out, and being done with it. I'm trying to take a breath, DC. So I found that queen, and I knew which hive I shook it out of, and I'd already taken probably half the frames out of it at that point. So what I did is I picked her up with my finger, I set her up on the entrance and just let her march right in, and thought, you know what, you girls figure it out. So I'm curious to know how this is going to work out come this next week when I try to make it back out there again, to see if there was too much disruption going on or what. But I don't know. It was something fascinating that I seen that I had zero intention of recognizing that there was any queens in there. I was just going to shake them out and steal the frames back. So, Mr. JW.
Hey, before you do, I need to go. Thank you for having me.
Jim, hey, I appreciate you coming on,
download
some information, and
You, Jim.
we'll talk soon, man.
See you, Jim.
Mr.
You
JW.
saved the least to last, eh? Is that what you're
Hey,
saying?
The best for last. The best for
Hurt my
last.
feelings again, aren't you? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to rename my apiary. Put this down in I'm going to call it Yo-Yo Apiary. Because one day things are great, and the next things aren't so great. And an old time beekeeper told me one time, you guys talk about making split and raising honey. That's another oxymoron, It's kind of like military intelligence. It doesn't go together. You can't do splits. You can't raise bees and make honey. It just don't. It just don't work. I'm sorry. An old timer told me that. I haven't been at this very long, but an old timer told me that it does not work. So take that as an advice from a guy that's been at beekeeping for at least a year. I'm on gonna be on my second or third year next year. So, this stuff, I'm optimistic. Honestly, I've been standing here doing smart aleck remarks, but bee wise, I'm optimistic about what's fixing to happen. I know that I've still got a real good possibility for flow. I've got a persimmon bloom out of this world right now. So the bees are just working the tar when they can fly. I guess you boys know on the dirty side of the river that we're forecast for rain again tomorrow. I am here, and they say we can get up to an inch again.
Y'all getting bad as Louisiana.
Hey,
Yeah, I think
we've had
it's
a
80,
real rainy
85 and sunny here.
year, but I've got a world of Dutch white clover in bloom. I've got a world of elderberry. I've got a world. You guys may not even. We have a wild turnip here that's got a nice bloom that the bees work. It's a little yellow bloom. It's a tall stemmy type plant, but the experts say they call it wild turnip. So, and we still have a pretty good autumn olive bloom here. There's a lot of it around, autumn olive and the bush honeysuckle. The bush honeysuckle is not a good, in my opinion, it's not a good nectar or pollen, but they do work it. They do like it. And if you can get enough of it, it makes a real nice honey. It's a light honey. If you like light honey, it's almost looks like water if you get enough of it to have a flow of it. But that's in a nutshell. That's my my synopsis on my.
Tell you how dark my honey is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's about half of last year and half of this year blended.
Yeah. I blend about everything, but mine's not near that dark, Joy.
Let's see if we can put a light on it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of, I don't know what you call it, milk thistle. I've got a lot of thistle here, and we do have, and it's just now starting to break out. Our milkweed, our native milkweed is just now starting to show a little signs of blooming, which my bees love. And I also have an oriental milkweed that I actually plant around my apiaries. That's it looks more like a thorn bush or milk thistle that you're talking about, DC. But we've got a lot of prospect for a honey flow, but I'm a little bit apprehensive. I'm optimistic, but yet I'm apprehensive about production. I don't feel like I'll have I was in 16 hives today, and out of 16, I've got 2 that I'd call, from a honey production standpoint, outstanding. I've got, they're both double deeps, and each one of them I put the 4 medium super on today. So they'll make, and the bottom 3 is already full. So they'll make those 2 hives will make, at least 10 pounds of honey. So I'm going to tell you.
A whole 10 pounds?
Because if things dry up, the bees may eat it all before I get to them. So, but you guys, I'm saying that jokingly, but you guys know what I'm talking about, because bees can go through a bunch of honey, by gosh, if we lose everything.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to count my chickens before the
What's your coon count?
Yeah, sir.
What's your coon count?
Joey, I got up to 12, and I'm just kind of backed off on the devils. They're smarter than I am. I've got one trap that they beat. I finally quit baiting it, and I baited the trap 5 nights in a row, and they got the bait out of the trap, but they didn't throw the live trap. So They're getting pretty smart. It may be, I don't know what it is. It might be a weasel. I've got some weasels around. Them little things are slick, and they can go through a head on a needle. I think they can slide through it off a small object, and they don't weigh enough. They don't weigh enough to hardly throw the pan on one of those live traps. So it may be a weasel that's getting my bait. Something's getting it, and something's eating all my cats. I'm averaging losing about 2 cats a week, which doesn't disappoint me. Helps my animal control situation, but it's a bobcat. I've got pictures of him, but he's taking some, and I think some coons took some some baby cats. So I'm having all kinds of creature problems right now. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I've been having raccoon issues myself with the mating nukes. They'll get up on anything with a jar feeder and knock that jar right over. And it's happened twice on a pretty good torrential rain. I mean, 3 inch of rain night type thing, and they were sitting with the jar hole wide open.
And they get a taste for that sugar water. If they develop a taste for it, man, they can be. I've been there and done that, and am there and doing that. I used leftover Milo tea jugs. Everybody probably knows what Milo teas are that you buy. I put my sugar water in that, and that's the way I carry it around in my fartmobile. And them bees decide they like that sugar water, and they just shoot holes in them and my spray bottles in my unit that I service my bees with. I was carrying 2 spray bottles, and they chewed the holes through the side of the spray bottles and took the sugar water out of them. And that's all been in the last 2 weeks.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the
I'm telling
situation,
you,
because I'm fighting it. I have to make a special trip out there, and it's only 10 minutes away, but still, I got to go out there just to set these darn traps before dark and make sure I'm upright. And so I can't wait till queen rearing's done as far as that goes. But they'll get up on a stand and knock a jar lid off. So
they will.
I've stacked rock yarns like a Norwegian explorer around my quart mason jars. So they really got to work to get those jars
you
off.
have them are they just sitting on top of your migratory?
No, they're all migratories. Yep, with a jar sitting on them. So I'm taking a strap of
do
duct tape up and over now.
Do you have holes in the migratories, or the jar just sitting flat on top of them?
It's got that 70G hole in there. Yeah, so they recess down in there 3/4 of an inch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so far so good.
And they're turning them over, the glass jars. They're turning them over with them set down in there.
Yep. They're just knocking. I think they're just walking by and just swatting them, or pulling. They basically have little hands, as you know, so they're pretty inventive. But they've knocked over a couple of the pro nukes, so I got wise to that. But anyway, I haven't had any issues until this year. So
it takes about 3 years from finding you. From now on, you'll have trouble.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
Yeah, I got. I'm trapping them, or they're leaving hide behind trying to get out of it. So what can you do?
I'm glad that I don't have to deal with that much. I did notice in one of the bee yards yesterday, I think it was, there were some scratch marks that were down in front of the hive in the dirt, or the kind of the mud, if you will. And I made a short video. I didn't post it yet. I sent it over to Melissa. Said, hey, we should consider, making a post on this or whatever. I don't know if it'll make it that far or not. Videos is not my forte, nor is it my high priority, basically. But, just kind of fun stuff. But I think it was probably either a skunk or probably a raccoon scratching at the entrance down there, trying to eat bees out of the front. But I didn't see any that were a couple dead ones, but not many. So I'm kind of unsure what was going on there exactly, but something was scratching at the entrance.
So I learned something with these raccoons messing with the nukes and stuff like that at night. going down there to set these traps. I've had a red headlight on, and I still wear my suit just because, I feel like they're gonna fly up in my face.
Mhm.
But what I was amazed at is the amount of activity that's on the front of a hive at 10, 11 o'clock at night. You have hundreds of bees out there almost in a bearding fashion,
Well, they do.
and they're not doing anything. They're not washboarding, but they're doing some sort of function in the middle of the night. I was just amazed to see. I mean, a skunk or raccoon could no more come up to one of the production hives in front and not just get tattooed, but I mean, let's call it 500 to 1,000 bees out on front, not just one or
Yeah.
two.
Do you
I'm
think
gonna
they
take the
were?
subject 100% here in just a minute. I've
Mhm.
been able to bring this up in 2 or 3 chats and then discuss it with the people on. I run all my bees on stands, and I put rubber matting underneath them, so I don't have keeps the weeds down underneath the hives stands. And I very seldom ever have any dead bees around. I got to watching here this year and just paying attention. And the English sparrows, or call them spatsies, whatever you want to do, that's everywhere. Them things are eating all those dead bees. I've been watching it, and I'm going to see if I can get enough combined to make a little video on it. But they feed there every day on those mats underneath my beehive, and they'll clean up about almost every dead bee. Has anybody else ever noticed that? Or birds?
I haven't noticed that, but I've noticed a lot of those little fence lizards this year. I mean, they are just there's almost one underneath every hive stand that I scurry away. So he's up there like a little T-Rex, just getting in. None of them are skinny either. They're all chubby like a Christmas ham. So they're obviously successful at eating my bees all day long whenever they want. That's the only thing I've seen pest wise so far.
Well, like I said, I'd never really paid that much attention, but I knew I didn't have very many dead bees around, Yeah, I got to watching, and most of mine has been being eaten by English sparrows around my place. But it'd be kind of a discussion for a chat sometime, is that everybody tune in on, what else is eating their bees or damaging their bees. What are the predators of the bees, the various ones.
So, are you saying these birds were out front, below the hives, eating the dead ones off the?
Oh yeah,
off the ground?
they come in there every day. I watched them this morning for probably 15 minutes. And I was out there working hives, and there, as soon as I'd move one, go over and sit down there, rest a minute or something. Why? Possums do eat. Yeah, Jason. Fred's not right on that. Possums will eat dead bees also, and skunks.
I guess anything that dead wise that gets consumed is a positive thing, with them mortuary bees trying to carry them off a mile away and drop them. Seems like they work so hard to get those old dead bees out, it's like but they get it somehow,
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope if I kick the bucket before you guys, which isn't likely, but just in case I would, I want somebody to come pick me up.
You said it's not likely that you would pass before us?
That's what I said.
I don't think Matt heard that.
I heard him. Yeah, it's that spunk that's going to make it happen too.
Are you saying it's the ladies that we are spouses? Is that what you're suggesting?
I was wanting to comment back there to Mark Miller too, because I figured he was, he wasn't paying the preacher when he's cried again about getting all that 15 inches of rain, or inch in 15 minutes or something again. If you start going to church, Mark, and dropping something when they pass the plate for donation, drop something in instead of taking money out, you probably have better luck. The good Lord will stop the rain in your area maybe a little bit. I know it did for me when I quit doing it.
Thank
Quit taking
God.
money out of the plate and putting money in. Now I take $1 out and put a quarter back.
Are you suggesting that's good?
Yeah.
Well, folks, he's back up to his lying game again. You can't Google search that, but
No, you can't.
you know, can't. He's telling some lies that we can't Google search, Matt, as he's gotten wise to us. You know.
That's well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was wanting to comment on some of this GMO stuff, but I thought I'd best leave my comments out of that. I'm a little bit anti-GMO.
Have you noticed the bees work soybean at all in your area, JW?
I thought we discussed this. There's some that they will on occasion.
Yep.
If they're genetically modified GMO beans, which are any of them that's like that's specific for like the Liberty herbicides or the various named herbicides, you'll find out that the bees won't work them. I've got a couple of tenant farmers that farm some of my ground actually that raise non-GMO. In soybeans, they get a premium price for them. They contract them ahead of time at almost a 30% increase over the standard market for GMO beans would be, and the bees will work. And I think I'm telling you right. I kind of get it mixed up. I'm getting old and senile, but if it's a purple bloom, there's a purple bloom and the kind of a white bloom, all white bloom. And the white blooms, you'll see the bees working, and that's the non-GMOs. Most of them GMOs will have it's genetically modified, will have a purple bloom on them.
Okay.
I won't say that there's not other colors, but that's the ones that I see in my area.
We have a lot of, the farmers got rained out after they sprayed, earlier in the spring and knocked down all that dead nettle and everything, kind of like they did in your area. They got rained out from corn, so they're planting a lot of late beans is what's going in around us. So,
well, good luck.
Yeah, I mean,
they're going to be fighting, and they're probably genetically modified of some kind. Either Liberty, they're what they call Liberty beans, which is I don't even know the genetic chemistry of it, but there's 2 or 3 variances in the type of GMO sprays, and the ones that work for corn, some of it don't work for soybeans. If you understand what I'm saying, so
sure.
It depends on what resistant type that they're using in your area. I would suggest that it's probably, if you talk to a local farmer and ask him what they was, I suspect they might be Liberty.
I know one of the farmers, we get eggs from him, so I can ask him. He's the one planting it. So he would know, so that's always a good question.
There's nothing in those. I mean, as far as the spray, that's strictly herbicide that's going to bother your bees either. I mean, I've got spray after spray after spray all around me all the time. I very seldom ever have. Once in a while, last year I had one hive, just some bees had got into something that they come in and died, but it wasn't even the whole colony, and that's the first one I've had in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, we don't have near the tillable ground that you have. We're lots of hills and valleys, but the valleys definitely are some row crop, mostly hay fields. But a lot of the fields that are getting planted are all going to be beans at this point.
Yeah. Well, time will tell.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, you answered that question?
Yeah. I would move it. Down here, especially with high beetles, they'll get under it. Bees can't get to them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They're not going to lay eggs in it anyway.
No. It'll be well. This time of year is probably not as big a deal, but it'd be harder for them to thermoregulate that, and not to mention
Yeah.
they're not going to want that. They're not going to want a cell that goes like this. They're going to want it like this.
Philip, you're right on that part on the big problem on some of the GMO stuff. But, most of my farmers are farmers around here. I know most of them pretty well. I call them sodbusters because they're all grain farmers. I was always in the livestock business. So I always called them, I refer to all of them as a sodbuster. I had 2 of them come visit me today. But they're pretty good about letting me know. I had one actually a young sprayer spraying today, and he's spraying one of my neighbors, all of his stuff. He said, "I'll let you know every time I'm going to spray. If there's any insecticide in it at all, I'll be sure and let you know." So I appreciated that,
Mm-hmm.
So
Why don't you guys download some advice of this young 13-year-old beekeeper? He said he's only been keeping bees his first month.
Awesome.
don't spend much money and quit as soon as you possible. That'd be my advice for him. Jay, have fun, young man. It's a very interesting hobby.
Look at this guy right here, Mr. Tennessee himself,
Look at
What's
there.
happening?
Jeremy Lindsay. This is Cayman's boss right here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
What's happening, my friend?
Uh,
I just decided to sit down before I went and showered. I figured I'd jump in and say hi.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did. Good to see
Just
you.
burning the candle at both ends as usual.
yeah, yeah.
That's the only way to do it.
Yep.
Do you do row crop farming, Jeremy?
Do what now?
Do you do row crop farming? No row crop? Okay.
No, I do like I'm small scale homestead.
Okay.
I just this year I haven't done really anything from just between my full-time job and we have a business and rental property, and then doing a bunch of just everything. So,
Hey, Jeremy, what kind of advice do you have for a young 13-year-old first 1 month beekeeper?
Find you a good mentor, son. I was smart aleck with you. I didn't realize you was 13 years old, but I was being smart aleck with you. But find you a good mentor and somebody.
yeah,
that's
I would
been
say a
on the ball.
mentor, but I mean, I never had a mentor. I just watched videos, and then I jumped in it. Of course, I'm an old guy too, but I definitely a young guy needs a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mentor, maybe a local bee club if you have it's kind of hard to say when you're new into beekeeping. You don't know what a good bee club is, right? Or what good advice
Yeah.
is, why don't you come on here and quit coaching me from the side, lady?
Sitting in this chair over here.
Oh, they're fighting, Joey.
Hey,
It's been pretty
I'm
go
gonna
dog.
Don't hurt him.
have to mute this to stop the camera. I got a lady up here coaching me from the side of this. Not working out really well for me.
Don't
You ever have that happen, Jeremy? Ever happen to you, man?
hurt him, Melissa. Not in front of us.
I just say yes, man, and keep moving.
Yeah.
That's not the answer I wanted to hear, bud.
Well, I'm just,
Tom's
my
like
wife's
tough on the
Vietnamese. She don't
live,
play around.
Yeah.
When she starts talking her lingo, it's time to settle down.
Yeah. She's fixing to put the stop to it, right?
I would tell Jay to try to learn something every day, and it could just be, just you're going to get what you put into it, or get out of what you put into it. So don't be afraid to, ask people questions. And if you feel like you're annoying them, maybe that's not the right person, but yeah, definitely try to get a mentor and there's no bad question. Just try to have fun. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
the bees will take it from there. You know, you start learning about them and start having fun. It's kind of addictive in a way, in a healthy way.
Yeah, I like that. My dad actually told me that a long time ago. It had nothing to do with beekeeping. When I was younger, my dad said to me, he goes, one thing you should always strive for in life is to learn at least one new thing every day. Doesn't matter what it is. One new thing. He said, never stop learning. Constantly increase, your knowledge base. That's why I hang out with Erwin there. Guy's an encyclopedia. He's like a world lifelong dictionary there, you know. Hey, the more the great.
That's the reason he Googles
advice.
every word I say. That's the reason he's always Googling me. He tells me what an encyclopedia I am, and everything I do, he can see him pop up his phone, Google me. Getting where I can't hardly lie at all.
Yeah.
I call it the JW retinue.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. He's got that retinue about him, right? Hey, are you saying he's like our queen bee?
Yeah,
Well, hey, you know what happens with that, Matt? On the queen bee, if she gets too far out of line, she gets taken out. So
yeah, that's right. I guess we are.
Remember that, JW.
Yeah, we'll run her
around. I'll tell you guys something. That's all not smartness. That's just experience for being around the sun about 81 times is all I can tell you.
Yeah, I know it.
Yep, I agree with that. That'll teach you something, right? My advice is,
and
don't
be beat out of money by every crook in the county.
Yep.
And half the state. you get pretty wise to the world, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. Hey Jay, where do you keep bees at? Like, what state are you in, or what area you're in? You don't give me an address or anything, but give me an idea where you're at in the country. I guess
you said North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. Okay, I probably missed that.
I may have misread that. I've been having trouble seeing.
This young man that dropped some comb in his hive was asking.
That's right.
If he took it out or not.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Did anybody respond to his question?
Yeah, Joey did.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joey. I missed it. I was asleep probably.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely try to learn something new every day. Don't be afraid of the mistakes when you make them, because I'm telling you, everybody that's sitting in this chat right now has made multiple mistakes, probably some of them that have cost us dearly. But, I would say embrace them and then try to learn from them. That's the biggest thing that I've done.
Yeah. Some of them we'll go tell everybody, and some of them we won't tell anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I try to disclose. I try to disclose when I screw up, because it's just one of those things. I mean, we're all going to do it. I even know some of the guys that you think are stellar that never make mistakes. Those guys have probably made more mistakes than any of us put together. They just may not disclose that much, So
it's funny though. We trip in the front yard or do something silly, and the first thing we do is look to see if anyone saw what just happened. At least that's me. No matter what it is.
Yeah.
Don't see that, no. It's just human nature, right? We don't want to be out of line. I don't know.
Are you talking about the time that I actually went to go mark a queen? It was summertime. The paint pen was hot, and when I went to go mark her, I put a blob on her the size of her entire head and thorax. That time,
my gloves look like I'm polka dotted the amount of times I'm dabbing it just to get it just right. Those competitive advantage I've noticed can get pretty drippy, Yeah. Even the pasta.
That's for sure.
Well, think about competitive. They don't have that nice bright fuchsia blue color. Theirs is the dark blue. I've been used to mark my hives with.
They have light blue. They have a lighter powdery blue.
Heck, since Matt's been out here a couple times, all my hive lids are polka dotted now. He's got them all polka dotted.
Have you checked in on that horizontal yet?
I've been in every one of them.
Have you? Are they still queen, right?
Yep.
Nice.
I also just thought about it. I was going to tell Jay if he can get his hands on the book Beekeeping for Dummies.
Yep.
I have never read it. I should, but I have never read it. But I've heard so many people talk about it.
Yep, and it's very cheap too. You can get them on Amazon.
Yeah.
Young man. Uh,
I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna order one just so I can hand it out to people and let them borrow it.
Where's the other book we have?
It's downstairs.
Go grab that, would you? Just go grab
you know, people, I may get some criticism for saying this young man, but you're still on there. There's a fellow on YouTube, and he's on there about every day. It's long-legged honeybees, and his name is David Burns. For a young man starting out, he puts out a lot of good information, and it's all geared to the beginning, primarily at the beginning beekeepers. David Burns, long-legged honeybees. You'll Google either one of them, you'll find out, and if you subscribe to him, he'll have at least one video a day for you to partake in.
Mm-hmm.
And he don't put out a lot of erroneous information. He puts out a lot of braggadocious statements, but he don't put out a lot of erroneous information, in my opinion.
He's in Illinois too, isn't he?
Yeah, that don't help him any.
No, it actually probably hurts him, but no, I'm kidding, JW. No, he does. I do agree, though. He is, for a beginning beekeeper. I know I watched him. I was a member of the Beak Squad myself.
A lot of the
as many
younger
videos as I watched.
that's been at it a while, going to be critical of me saying that, but I think he puts out a lot of information for a young man just starting out that'd be helpful to him.
Yeah, I'd balance that with Bob Denny's and kind of try to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
That was it, Tom.
That's it? Got it?
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
where you
kept
get the
hearing
echo.
everybody- I kept hearing everybody talk and then hear him talk again. I thought, wait a minute, what's going on here? I'm a rookie at this. I'm on my son's computer. I'm too busy to get on here too often. I like to get on here and listen to everybody else. But yeah, I was hearing everybody talk again. I was like, okay, what's going on? So YouTube was open.
Yeah, that's it.
But
I actually learned that the hard way too, Jeremy.
yeah, I mean, one of these days I'll step up to the big leagues and get something like Joey and have a bunch of about 6 monitors with several keyboards and stuff. Oh, wait a minute, that's Lee from Kodiak. Never mind.
Yeah, that's Lee. I only got 2 monitors, and I don't keep the second one hooked up very much.
Yeah. Eventually I'll get me a man cave here when all these kids get old enough I can kick them out.
See, that's what I'm thinking too, man. Jeremy, I got 2 boys left at home. They're 18, and when one of them gets out of here, I'm gonna turn that room. I'm gonna get me a nice computer set up in there, a couple monitors on the wall.
Yeah.
Get a karaoke machine.
Heck yeah, I am.
We got one of those because of my wife. Trust me, they love karaoke.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? We're basically wishing our kids away, but I'll tell you at the end of the day, those kids grow up so doggone fast that you blink and they're all of a sudden, they're little, and then the next thing you know, they're moving out and getting married and such. It's crazy how quickly that.
Oh yeah, I've got grandkids from my oldest, so but they never come around. And then one of them left and then thought he could do it on his own. Then he realized, and he came back home, done a repeat. So he's doing really good now, and I'm proud of him. But
that's good. That's okay. You know what? Fall down and get back up.
Yeah, I mean, once they humble themselves and realize, then I don't care. But I've got one. He's just like, he's dug his heels in. I'm like, buddy, anything I can do to help you? Let me know. Nope, it's a big negative. So
yeah.
But anyway. So I know y'all probably talked about it, but I know the flows. I mean, we had a really good flow here. We've had the best black locust bloom I've seen in years. It was so good it came and had delivered 100 nukes out to a buddy of mine up here in Sevierville. And he even called me and couldn't believe how just everywhere. And it was phenomenal. Blackberries phenomenal. I mean, just rocked on. And then all of a sudden that rain moved in. And then we had them, the tornado weather we had come through blew all of our tulip poplar blooms off.
Oh man.
But something's trickling in, maybe mimosa, maybe I've seen some elderberry, but I don't ever see the bees really work very much. Even when Bob was in Maryville a couple of nights ago and I went and seen him speak, me and him was talking about it. And he said the same thing. He sees them on elderberry, but not like, really working it for nectar. So then, of course, we've got more rain moved in. But it's still, even though with all that, I'm going to double my honey pool this year than the last couple of years. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a plus. And I sampled some of it, and it's really, I don't really know. It's, obviously I know they work the blackberries. I want to say it's blackberry because it's just so aromatic. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't even know if it's a word.
Yep.
Anyway,
Aromatic. Yep.
it's almost got like a grape. The back end of your throat, like a grape flavor, which I know they don't work the grapes really. There's a couple of muscadines around here, but I don't even think those are. I don't know a whole lot about it. I grow some, but not to the point of where they would work anything.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's really good. It could be mostly the black locust, but I mean the blooms were hanging. I'm talking about some of the longest tassels I've ever seen on black locust, and I didn't
Really?
even know I had that many around. I knew I had a bunch around me, but this year I really realized how many I had around me. I mean, I had places down here by the golf course and other places I didn't even know it was black locust trees because we've been in a drought for the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So. But I was talking to Chris and even Brian at Castle Isle. I chimed in for a couple of minutes. Like they were saying the same thing, that they kind of got washed out. It started good and got washed out. So I don't know if Missouri's the same.
Oh yeah.
I know Louisiana's different because you guys are deep south. So
we've gotten some, but by and large, this will be less than a stellar crop for the Missouri Midwest area. By and large, just way too much rain, just constant rain, and we actually broke a record, wettest April on record, I think. And I don't believe May was even much better than that, honestly. So
that's
too many rain
crazy.
days, not enough fly days.
Well, we was the wettest May we've had in, I think they said 7 or 8 years here in East Tennessee. So,
wow.
What was crazy is that, like I said, the black locusts were able to really put a good flow on, again, the blackberries before all that rain. We was getting a trickle, enough for what we needed. But then when that rain opened up, I know, Joy, you was telling me that your flow was kind of started out different and weird and kind of started improving.
Yeah, we were like 3 weeks behind normal, but we hadn't had a normal year in like 3 or 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah, see, the Castle High, we broke 8 inches of rain in May. That's wild.
Yeah.
So.
He's in the desert compared to some places.
Yeah.
We've had more than that here, I guarantee you. I've got it wrote down. I'd have to total it up, but we've had more than that in May.
Yeah, you were asking me earlier about the row crops, and it was echoing. So typically I put out I got 11 acres, and typically I'll do usually a 1/3 acre of sunflowers. I'll usually do, your traditional garden. I'll mix it with tomatoes and everything, and then corn. And then I'll do another 1/3 acre. I'll do watermelons or something like that. But I had a pond started digging out in probably the fall of last year. And it's a 3/4 acre pond. I told the guy to dig to red clay. Well, I didn't know he was going to dig 23 feet. So he digged 23 feet to this thing. I mean, I'm looking at like, that's a crater. So he was actually going to start working a bunch of dirt back down in it. I wanted it around 15 so I could stock it with copper nose bluegill and stuff like that. Well, he took a lot, and it was really a runoff pond. But where I live up on the ridge, and then the interstate runs behind me, I get a lot of water. So it had a problem with water, and it had a lot of that sooty, what do you call it? That sludge, like silt in it. It was so soupy, he had to build a road out to it. But long story short, he took all that out and dumped it into my big gardens. So he was supposed to come, when he finished, he was supposed to take a big high lift and get out there and spread it all out. Well, we got into the rainy part of December. They ain't ever come back. So they're still probably about maybe a week and a half worth of work, but we had all this rain. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm not really planting it. I got all this dirt mounded up, and I can't do anything with it. I took a bobcat down there I have in the barn. I took it down there trying to get it, and it just where it's still, it needs to be spread out to dry out. It's not really good dirt, but if we dried it out and spread it out, then I could have worked it into the topsoil.
Once you get it dried out, you'll find it's pretty good dirt too.
Mixed in, and
It's hard to
been
get
kind
dried
of-
out. You'll be getting stuck in that a year from now if you don't get it spread out.
That's exactly, and it's my buddy that actually, it's his Bobcat. He's been doing some helping me build a wall on my driveway by my barn. But he said the same thing. He said, until you get that spread out, he said, my Bobcat can't get in it. I mean, I tried it too. You can't get in it. And you literally need a big machine. I mean, a high lifts, mini dozer, what, not even a mini. It needs to be a good size machine. And then some sunshine.
Your Bobcat a wheel unit or track?
No, it's track, but it don't matter. We've had so much rain, and that stuff packs like it's drier than it was, but it's like clay. It's almost like Play-Doh, or kind of like Play-Doh clay. It's wild. And but like you said,
break through it, and then you go to your knees.
Once, like he said, if he could get that spread out, walked in, worked out, and just left it laying out there thin, let that sun hit it, work it. He said, then you'll be able to go right across it with some disc and then my tiller box, and it'd be game on. But so this year's kind of and I don't want to till up a new section of grass and all that. It's too late in the game. And I'm just like, you know what? Every time I look back there, it's almost depressing because I've got a crater back there. And
well, I don't think you can get a pond too deep because it fills in. Especially if you got a lot of flow into it, it'll.
Yeah,
it
is. We're gonna do some piping out there, and I'm gonna do some kind of a drainage system above it from the interstate area, and then from the subdivision here I'm in sets up high, kind of works its way down. And of course, I'm in a subdivision, but I have that 10 acres attached to my property here. But we've already got we've got like a bunch of rocks built up through there to where when the water runs off, it kind of works its way through the rocks. But then it's got to be worked in, and then where he cut it, he had a big 5-foot bucket track hole back there when he was digging it out. Instead of sloping it, he just cut it. But he's planning on coming back and start working that back up and start just walking it in around it. Because even though it'll fill up, I mean, halfway, it won't hold it very long. So, and even though it's red clay, everybody's told me, I've talked to a couple people at ponds, they said, yes, it's red clay, but you still got to walk that in. He said, you still got to pack that in there. And he said, you're still going to get seepage. So he said, I'd have him, that road, he left that little bit of that road out. So he said, I'd have him walk that road that's in there back on, just walk it in there because it's red clay. Just walk it in. And you're right. It can't be too deep. But I mean, if he could bring it up a little bit, and then I got piles of dirt around it. I mean, he took out so much dirt. You'd have to see it. It's like, what in the world? But,
hey, JW, what's that material that they use inside there to help seal those ponds up? Am I thinking vermiculite? Is that right?
It's benadite, isn't it?
Benadite.
Like
benadite, drilling mud.
But I was told that only lasts so long. There's supposedly, I'm on that pond owner's Facebook page, and somebody on there saying they got something now that actually seals better. And even with benadite, you have to work it in when you spread it. You can't just spread it on the ground.
Benadite, if it's in a seam where you like a coal seam or a shale seam or something, it'll seal those seams off, and then once they get sealed, it'll stay in there.
Okay, I got you. I mean, I don't know. I just read different opinions and everything. You don't know.
I'm not going to say what would be new, Dave.
And I don't want to spend a liner for that thing. Boy. And it's like I said, it's only 3/4 acre, as far as distance, but it's, I mean, you don't want to have to start buying a liner for something even as small as it is. And it's actually, even though 3/4, it's pretty good size. I figured it was like, I thought it was maybe an acre. It looks that big. But when I measured, I took me a 100-foot tape measure. Man, my son's measured it across. I've done the math. I was like, what's only 3/4 acres as far as distance wise?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, but it is what it is. That's a long story short for the row crops. Now, the people around me, I've got a bunch of cattle people around me. I mean, the pasture butts up to mine, belongs to Mike, my neighbor. He's got it, and he's got a farm at the bottom when you come in to where my subdivision is. And then he's got acres above it. He does all kinds of, I don't know if it's Angus or what it is. I've talked to him, but I've never really talked much about his cattle. He kind of stays busy all the time. He does, and then the neighbor beside him, Jeff Underwood, they do cattle, but they do a lot of that mostly for hay, which is what most of those, they'll move their cows around, but the majority of it is always hay. And then once they're done for the season, they'll start moving all their cattle on. You know how that works, but we're surrounded pretty good. And then we got that golf course, which is always You always wonder why you never see weeds on a golf course. All you got to do is talk to one of the guys that work there, and you'll find out.
Yeah.
So, and Bob was talking about how it's not good to have bees close to the golf course. I'm like, well, you know, as a crow flies, I'm about a mile. So, but I don't know. I don't know what I would be looking for, even if he was talking about that flovalinate and that Kumafos and all that at their that Maryville meeting he done.
It builds up in the comb, you know.
Exactly. That's exactly what he was touching on. It was and he's actually the reason why I started cycling my comb. You know, I always went with what Cayman said. Oh, comb's never too old. I mean, I love Cayman to death. But then when he started talking about that, I thought, oh yeah, comb's too old. It's time to ditch this stuff. You know what I mean? I don't even, as old as it is, I don't even try to recycle it. I don't even recycle it. I ditch it now. But that freaked me out. And they said that you find that a lot around golf courses. I said, oh, great. That's awesome.
You know, they use a lot of herbicides, of course, you know, and insecticides too, to keep, you know, beetles and stuff from eating up those greens and eating up a lot of grubs, you know, like that turf grass.
I know one guy said he worked for one and they would actually mix green dye and stuff in their, and I don't know what it was, some kind of liquid. And he said that's a lot of times you see the greens, like the, you know, where the green is. A lot of times it's green because of what they mix in there, and then they'll spray that early in the morning before they get out there. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He says, no, they did that all the time.
You can also put a tracer agent in there, and that helps you show where you've sprayed whatever chemical you're using. You can do that too, but they're probably using it to get a little bit of color back in it. You know, most golf courses spray more herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. I mean, than anything else. You know?
Oh, it's a combination. I mean, obviously they look awesome. You know, golf courses always look really good, but you never really think about it until when Bob brought that up. I thought, man, you had to go and ruin it. I love where I live, and now you're talking about all that stuff, and I'm like, man, wow. It's like, what do you do? Maybe that's why the honey tastes so good here. Maybe that's why I got a blue ribbon when it was a highlight, because of all that fluvalinate and Kumafos. Who knew? You know.
I'm gonna start pouring some of that in my honey tank. Mix it up good, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm 7 years in, but I'm still a greenhorn. Like I said, 7 years. I'd heard people talk about it, and I'd never sit and listen to Bob at the expo ever. I've always been busy. I've never had the chance to go sit down, you know, out there with the vendors and everybody. And I told him, this is the first time I got to listen to you talk in person. He was shocked. I was like, well, you know, it is what it is. So, but I'm not complaining. You know, it is what it is. But
hey guys, I'm going to end this stream off. You guys can hang out in the background here if you want to. We can chat, but I'm going to end this thing out for the night. So it's almost 10 o'clock. JW is starting to turn orange a little bit, so I know he's turning into his pumpkin.
That's that facial he just got.
Yeah.
Still tan and lotion.
He doesn't look a day over 79 right now. You know,
he
looking good.
No, he's looking about 76 and a half.
Yeah. Hey, listen, guys. Thanks. Appreciate you guys hanging in here with us, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Hopefully, Rick will be back here next week. He can handle that.
Hey, good to see you, Joey. These other guys, I could care less. Well, you can. I mean, these other two, I could care less about.
All right. See y'all.
See ya.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.